We're here for our WorkBuzz webinar today, and as you can see from the title, we're going to be talking about the business case for employee engagement. So my name is Dawn Smedley. I'm head of culture here at WorkBuzz. I'm lucky enough to have worked in culture and employee experience for over 13 years now, I think, and love being part of WorkBuzz and our vision to improve the working lives of 1 million people. WorkBuzz is for everyone, for those who don't know us. We've designed the most flexible and simple survey platform to reach every employee, wherever they are, whatever they do. It's the fastest way to gather insights, to identify areas for improvements, to retain staff, attract new employees, and build a culture where every voice matters. And hopefully what you get with every touch point is WorkBuzz is just how passionate we are about this. So today, we're going to be talking all about the business case. And it's a question we get asked for help with all the time. We had 190 people register for today's webinar, which speaks for itself. I think as people professionals, we know employee engagement is a key factor to organisational success, but implementing an employee engagement strategy that creates meaningful change in your business performance, profitability and culture takes resources. Often getting support and investment from senior leadership can be one of the biggest challenges for HR teams. So in this webinar today, what we hope to do is help you think about how to develop and build your business case. And this is what we plan to go through. So how to connect employee engagement to your business objectives, getting buy-in from your internal stakeholders, shaping that path to success, how to structure that business case and really demonstrate that ROI. And there's a handy tool that we'll share with you at the end of this as well, which you can absolutely take away and use as you begin to get help building your big business case. And I'm here with the fabulous Ian Barrow. He's our Client Services Director here at WorkBuzz, to hopefully shed some light on how to do this. And we've both worked in this space for a long time now, hence the grey hair. And along with others at WorkBuzz, we've created an ebook which you can download at the end of the webinar if you haven't already, which goes into lots of detail on where to start and how to do this. There's business templates in there and all sorts. But today we're going to go through the content of that at a high level. But first, just some context. What's the current state of play? If we just look on the screen right now, there is so much evidence out there to prove that engagement matters. Just look at some of the names that you've got here, obviously WorkBuzz, but you've got Gallup, you've got SHRM, you've got Gartner, you've got some of the biggest companies in the world shouting about the impact of employee engagement. So PerkBots, disengaged employees cost the UK economy £340 billion. Replacing an employee can cost as much as 6 to 9 months worth of their salary coming straight from SHRM. There's so much evidence out there. So why are we still here? Why are we still having to prove that engagement matters? Ian, tell us a bit of history.
History. I think there's a number of things really that, I mean, employee engagement has been around probably over a century, believe it or not. I mean, around about 1900, the Quakers started to talk to their employees, and really they were the first people. You know, when you think of the big chocolate manufacturers in the UK like Cadbury's and Roundtrees, they started to ask people how they felt. You know, prior to that, it was very much a different world, and we've gone through a process now over time where we're starting to evolve the whole process of simple questioning around employees. So even when I've been around about 30 years doing this now. When I first started it, there was still too many kind of what I used to call happy sheets around, you know, do you like working here? What's your job like? Fantastic. We'll talk to you again in a year. And that was about it. Whereas now we're very much to the point where we're talking to employees about how they feel, hearts and minds, you know, and how they're bought into the organization and behaviors and the psychology of work. So it's evolved hugely. Why are we still here, though? Why are we still worrying about why engagement matters, if you like, for organizations? I think there's a number of factors. I don't think some organizations, and I'm not saying all by any means, but I don't think lots of organizations link employee engagement to what you see on this slide here. So we've gone through a really, really unpredictable period over the last 30 years when you look at it, you know, from probably 2 or 3 recessions through to, certainly in the UK, we had Brexit. Obviously in the States, colleagues there won't have impacted you, but it definitely impacted people in the UK. Competitive pressures. So we saw the growth of the Chinese markets and other Eastern countries who came into markets and have grew unbelievably. We obviously had the small thing of the pandemic for about 3 years as well, which changed the way of the world and the way of thinking. And then a number of other factors which were on top of those kind of big global macro factors. So, the loss of top talent. I'm assuming most people are familiar with the term, the term in terms of resignation and recruitment, but also in terms of changing the way people think about organisations post-pandemic. So there was a huge number of factors which are starting to impinge on organisations. But what organisations fail to do, or a lot of organisations fail to do, was to link engagement to these factors. The fact that they didn't link engagement to their business metrics, the fact that they didn't link engagement to getting through these big changes in the world, these big changes to the business. So we had lots of organisations who believe in engagement and they believe in the fact that listening to employees is the right thing to do, but they didn't make the link between employee engagement and how people felt and the experience they were having within organisations with the bottom line metrics or other metrics such as revenue and profits and the way people felt. There's almost a feeling in some organisations that engagement happens by osmosis. It just happens, and we don't have to be interactive, and we don't have to get involved in that. So I think, why is there a business case? Why do we need to create business cases around engagement? It's because we need to get organisations, even now, to evolve and make sure that they see the links between higher levels of engagement and the fact that it helps you cope with big macro world events. It helps you cope with the competition. It helps you cope with the efficiencies within your organisation. The need to do more with less. More engaged people rise to the challenge, if you like, when we're pushing these things on people. So the need to decline in budgets, the need to do more with less. Really important that people start to see the link between high levels of engagement and how it helps the organisation tackle those challenges.
And I guess moving from where we were and everything that's happened to the future of work, then again, it really fundamentally shows the importance of putting employee voice at the heart of your decision making, because things are changing so fast across every sector. And, we're facing into some of these things now, aren't we, that are really shaping what that future of work looks like?
Yeah, I think these are uncertainties. They're not even fact that they will happen, but they're taxing all of us at the minute. We just don't know how far AI is going to go. I mean, we see AI all around us. You buy something off Amazon and it knows who you are and it recommends other products for you. The AI predicts what books you're going to read. AI works in the supermarket when you're buying groceries, and you're being tracked through your loyalty cards. So AI is all around us, but we just don't know how far that's going to go. The recent comments a couple of months ago now, a month or so ago, by Elon Musk that lots of jobs are going to disappear in the future, but what will they be and how will that look? So we're not sure about AI, how far it's going to take us. It's either a good thing or a bad thing, depending how you view that. And if you're negative, we might end up in a Terminator type world. And if you're positive, it's going to be a fantastic aid for all of us. But we don't know what that's going to look like. And linked to that, the type of jobs people are going to do and into the future will change. What will those jobs look like, and what will be the new jobs that's going to come along to replace what we're doing now? Is it all going to be about working with AI in terms of our jobs of the future, and what does that feel like, and what will that look like? So there's uncertainty around that. I think the pace of change is unbelievable as well. If you think back to what happened in the pandemic, and it forced us all to think about our businesses differently. It was probably the biggest change in our working lives, certainly for over a decade, and certainly over longer than that probably. So how will the pace of change affect people? And if you don't react to the pace of change, and you don't have employees who buy into change and buy into change happening quickly within organisations, that's where engagement comes in again. And really, that is another uncertainty. The pace of change is faster than ever, and if it keeps going as it is, we're going to have workforces and businesses that react quicker. I also think there's a different approach needed to leadership. We saw that within the pandemic. There was more empathy, there was more feeling, there was more love in the air, if you like, from organisations for employees, wanting to take them through that process of the pandemic and out the other side, a more caring attitude. Organisations became more human without a shadow of a doubt. And I think that approach is valued and continues to be valued for employees. So what will leadership, and I'm talking about leadership at all levels, how will that impact in the future, and what will that feel like? Leaders, team leaders now within organisations, they're not just there to deliver a service or deliver a product. They have to understand well-being. They have to understand mental health issues. They have to understand how to nurture and develop and lead people. They have to manage people on a day-to-day basis. They have to put an arm around people when going gets tough for individuals. So the roles of these people managers in organisations, these people leaders, is developing and changing as well. And what will that look like into the future? What else will we be asking of our leaders? And I guess the last thing, really, the other uncertainty is being an employer of choice means that we have to think differently about roles. So I hate harking back to the pandemic, but it changed the values that people place on work. It changed the values on what people had about their workplace and the people they work with and how they work. So hybrid working is still huge for lots of people. So the way we create roles within organisations maybe have to be different in the future. What those roles look like in the past might not be the same roles. It might be the same work, but the way the role is constructed and where people work from and how people work and the work-life balance that they have might be different into the future as well. So I think there's a number of uncertainties, and there's probably more. You can probably think within your own industry of other uncertainties as well, but these are the big ones that we see coming out of the surveys that we work with at WorkBuzz.
And I think the common thread across all of that it just increases that business case for why engagement matters. And I think it's not just thinking about employee engagement at an overall organizational level, it's actually how you break that down and think about how engaged your people leaders are and how well you're listening to them to understand their needs in this changing dynamic that they're working within and the expectations of the people around them, the different generations that are now in the workforce. Then that business case for employee engagement actually isn't just an overarching business case for the organization, but it's actually for those different stakeholder groups, because if you can get them thriving and fulfilling their potential, then they're going to impact on the employee experience the most. So I think there's so many different directions we could go in kind of when we talk about the business case for employee engagement. But I think, it comes down to the fact that engagement is a choice. All we can do is create a culture that people choose to engage with. And if we don't know what matters to them, then we're not able to shape that experience. We're not able to truly understand. We can guess and we can make sweeping assumptions, but it's only when we ask the right questions that it really gets to the heart of what matters to people, so we can shape that culture and create that culture that people choose to engage with.
Yeah, we've also got, you touched on it, Dawn, we've got a different generation coming through at the minute as well. Gen Alpha, who are around about 10 to 12 years old at present. And if you think about those individuals, I'm sure lots of people on the call have children at that age. But if you think of children now, we use screens to pacify them, entertain them, teach them, develop them. They use screens in school. I wish I'd thought of this term, but I heard recently somebody call them screenagers, which I thought was fantastic. I wish I'd thought of that. But the implications for that, for Gen Alpha when they come into the workplace in 10 years' time, is that they're going to expect that in the workplace. They're going to expect to be trained and developed via screens. They're going to expect to work within screens. Solutions within the work environment are going to be via a screen. Now, that's huge implications, because if you've got training programs within your organizations which are face-to-face programs, they're probably not going to be reactive or as effective, if you like, with that generation when they come through. So there's lots of change and uncertainty, but it's also about the workforce that's going to come through over the next kind of 10 years as well.
Yeah. So let's start thinking about the main aim of this webinar today, which is really to help you think about building that business case. So it'd be really interesting if people are happy to share if they're having any challenges with that themselves now, whether or have done in the future. And it would just help us answer some of those questions as we're going through. So if you've experienced challenges from your senior leadership team, or you just don't know where to start, pop it in the chat and we'll try to make sure we cover all that off. There is going to be a follow-up after the webinar where we'll send various bits through. But again, we'll try and cover off those questions that you ask within the webinar today, either during it or after it as well. But I think we know what engagement is, but we're still not doing a great job of elevating the conversation around this and linking engagement to other business metrics. So how do we start doing this better? Mr. Barrow.
I think there's, yeah, sorry, I was looking at a comment that come in. I think there's a number of things. I think when you start to listen to employees and when you start to think about your organization, as I said right at the beginning, it's about linking how employees think and how they behave to your performance metrics, to your business metrics. So you should start by asking yourself a simple question: what are our objectives, our strategic business objectives? And we're talking about whether it be performance in terms of revenue or other financial factors, whether it be a certain number of output, whether it be service or product. It could be just values and behaviors. What you're trying to achieve as an organization, and what's the journey you're on. So what we're trying to build is a set of KPIs. Once you've established what they are, you can take a step back. You can start to ask yourself, so how do we need people to help the organization? What do individuals and teams and the bigger piece need to do to help us achieve those objectives? What qualities do we want our employees to demonstrate within the organization to help us deliver that strategy? It's the total sum of the parts which is going to deliver your KPIs. You're not just going to do that in isolation with a small group of people. So how do we want the organization to behave? And then finally, taking a third step back is what are the key drivers and attitudes of behavior? So what aspects of working life are having an impact on the way employees behave and feel? And what makes them behave and think in a certain way? And that's where you start thinking about, how do I build listening programs? How do I build surveys? How do I build employee research, which is going to answer those key questions? And it really helps you. It's a kind of virtuous circle, if you like, so that if you take this approach and you start to link your business metrics to what you need to do within the organization, to employee behavior, you start to get the right questions. You start to ask the right questions around engagement. You start to understand engagement. You start to understand how it answers these big things, these big questions, right down to answering the big overall things around KPIs. So you start to make the links all the way through down to employee listening programs. So you get those drivers, you understand what they are. You understand how those drivers help you achieve certain objectives. And ultimately, you want those objectives help you achieve your big KPIs. So it's not just about saying, okay, we'll build a listening program, we'll measure engagements. What do we need to ask? You start at the other end of the scale and you say, what do we need to achieve? How do we want people to behave? Therefore, we can build an engagement program around that gets people in the right space.
Start with the end in mind. That's what I always like to say. And I think if we go back to, we run an annual piece of research called the State of Employee Engagement. And if we think about the most common organisational metrics that we link engagement to, then it won't be any surprise to you that the link to retention is huge. Impacting on recruitment practices, performance, productivity, inclusion as well, actually. But what we're seeing is that actually just measuring engagement on its own fell 3 places in our State of Employee Engagement research, which is showing that actually the outcome of a really positive employee experience is is kind of the impact on the business metrics that you see here. So retention climbing 3 from last year. So I think we're seeing so many more conversations really be around those business metrics. And when we're talking about engagement, when we're talking about employee experience, then it's that shift is happening. And it's so important to know what the metrics are inside your own organizations and link engagement to that as your starting point. That's why kind of like in everything that we're doing, we're really starting by asking organizations kind of whether this aligns with them. Are these your big 4 challenges? And it'd be really interesting for people on the call to tell us kind of what your biggest challenges are right now. And if this is resonating with you in terms of what your organization is trying to achieve, because then in this next bit, we're going to talk about how to link it to that as well. So Ian, if you want to I think the power when you do it well, though, is that you see results like this. And what we've done is just pulled out some real impact examples from some of the organizations we work with who have had that really clear endpoint in mind at the beginning of their journey, which has helped us build an employee listening strategy to truly impact on engagement by asking the right questions. So with Premier Foods, they had a huge emphasis around inclusion and building an inclusive culture. So through the questions that we asked and through the demographic data that we were able to capture in the survey, we were able to really kind of break the data down to really inform some of the strategies, improve the ROI of specific initiatives that they were working on as well. And I think it was Victoria, kind of one of the questions in the chat says that one of the challenges is around isolating the impact of an individual program as a challenge. So Victoria was saying that they tend to measure via attendance, feedback afterwards, demand, but a struggle to connect to actual performance and productivity. I think what we see a huge success with is overlaying kind of the employee data with some of those business metrics around productivity, operational performance, sales. If you're in health and social care, client satisfaction, things like CQC ratings here in the UK. If you can add those business metrics into your survey data as a demographic, then it enables you to really look at the ROI of some of those initiatives that you're working on, people's intent to stay on the back of those initiatives that you're driving. Do people feel valued and appreciated on the back of the recognition programs that you're implementing? So I think you probably have the data there already. It's just how you then link it all together to weave that story together about the business impact of the things that you're doing. So with Premier Foods, it was all about inclusion. With Home Instead in health and social care, it was all around the impact on customer satisfaction and CQC ratings. At HS2, it was all about improving retention and the monetary value that they could demonstrate with the savings that were made by that improvement in engagement and retention. And with Stonbury, it was all around health and safety and that decrease in injuries and accident frequency rates. So again, like, it's really powerful stories that change the way that people think and feel about engagement within the organizations. And it goes from you just talking about an engagement score to tangible business impact. And that's where the true power of building that business case is. But you have to know your starting point. You have to know that end to work everything back from there to be able to ask the right questions. And Ian's just going to talk you through kind of the model that we use to kind of really help you do that.
Yeah, there was a couple of questions as well, Dawn, in the chat where people were saying recruitment and retention. That was Eric, Christian, and Josh. And Jane talked about the lens of happiness and joy. The happiness and joy bit, I'm a big fan of that, really big fan of that, because we run employee engagement surveys for lots of organisations, over 500 now. And one of the questions which some organisations use in the surveys is that I enjoy my job. And I love asking that question simply because it's almost, if you think of a kind of Maslow hierarchy of needs, if you don't enjoy your job, how are you supposed to drag yourself out of bed in the morning or start of your shift and look forward to the rest of the day? So happiness and joy at work, I'm big fan of doing that. And if you can build that into people's roles and build that into your organization, that you've hit the starting line and you're well beyond it. You know, how can you expect people to be highly engaged if they don't like what they do? So yeah, big fan of that, Jane, and keep pushing those buttons around that. In terms of recruitment and retention, I think this is where engagements and the experience that you have in the workplace is really important. So we measure engagements on what we call the say, stay, strive model. And basically what we're looking at there is the big, massive outputs of what you see across an organization. So being proud to work for your organization is made up of a myriad of things. It's not just one thing that makes you proud. It's multiple things that make you proud. So you have to get lots of things right for somebody to say, yeah, I'm proud to work here. Similarly, to be an advocate, you won't tell people it's a great place to work unless lots of things are going right. You know, that might be having great leadership or a great manager or fantastic communication, or you get recognized when you do a good job, etc., etc. There's lots of things that have to go right for you to be an advocate. Staying with the organization, this is the retention piece. Again, the experience has to be fantastic in lots of different ways for somebody to say, yeah, I'm going to stay here. I'm not going anywhere. This is a great place to be. And finally, motivation. You know, to be motivated, you have to be happy. To come back to you, Jane, you have to enjoy what you do, and to be motivated in a job. So we look at engagements and we measure engagements across those big 4 output measures, and then everything else that people experience, whether that be leadership, whether it be the way they're communicated with, whether it be how they're managed or empowered, or whether I'm recognized or rewarded. All of those things become driving factors of those big engagement outputs. Now, I'm quite happy for anybody to argue, hey, Ian, it's chicken and egg that. You can't have a great employee experience if people aren't engaged. And you can't have engaged people unless they get a great employee experience. So I'm happy for anybody to argue what comes first, you know, the experience or the engagement. But suffice to say, they're interlinked. And that's a really critical point around measuring engagement. You know, it's not just about saying, well, we've got 4 questions here, we've got a measure, and that's what engagement is. It's not. It's a bigger part than that. It's much bigger than that, and it's around that kind of intangible thing around your culture as well, and how people feel. You know, how they feel in their gut, how they feel in their heart and minds about working in an organization. Some of the stuff you can't measure, that kind of thing. So it's really important that you measure that. And when we talk about recruitment, when we talk about retention, it's this kind of stuff that builds into your EVP, your employee value proposition. So you're projecting your best self out there for recruitment, but it's also the stuff that keeps people in the organization when you do all of that stuff in the middle well. And you get these business outcomes, obviously, the link to those business outcomes. Again, we get high levels of retention, we get less absenteeism, we get more productivity. In production workplaces, you see less accidents, for example, and we get to see a number of other factors. So once you can build that model, that kind of scorecard, if you like, from I'm engaged, I have a great experience here, and it helps me be more productive. It helps me be more aware of accidents. It helps me be much more happy here. I'm more than happy to stay for the duration, you know, etc., etc. That's where you get those better business outcomes.
And often, well, in your line of work, Ian, then you're working directly with organisations to prove that linkage between engagement and those business metrics. How strong is that correlation?
It's huge. It's been certainly in the UK. There was I'm sure people will be familiar with Engage for Success. That was around 2011 now, so it's more than 12 years old. But they worked at that point in time to prove all those links between the business outcomes you see there. But we see it in every single survey, particularly where people are doing multiple surveys, and the survey more often than annually, and they've done the link to the business metrics. Their engagement goes up. You see the metrics go up that you want to go up, obviously in terms of retention and productivity, and you see the metrics that you want to go down, absenteeism and things like accidents and stuff like that. So where organisations share those metrics with us, those kind of corporate business outcome metrics, we can measure, we can map that against engagement change. We can map that against other scores as well. So people manager is a critical one. The person who you report into, and those people managers in how they recognize and communicate and reward people, and how they communicate, and particularly across different generations. Now you can be a people manager and have multiple generations in your team. So how you manage those people is really important, and that plays a really important part in achieving this metric. So we see those links day in, day out in the surveys we run, and there's organisations who task us with making the links between those metrics as well. But you should be able to see them. You walk into organisations with high levels of engagement, and when I actually go and visit them, and you see this as well, Dawn, it's almost tangible. You feel it when you walk through the doors. You feel it in the air. You feel it when people talk to you, and when they even just I've walked down the corridors of organisations that have high levels of engagement, and people are just talking to you as a guest. How are you today? How's it going? What are you here to do? Who are you here to see? And it's those kind of things they're interested in because they're engaged. So it's those the link is absolutely clear. There's lots of evidence for that link, but we see it day in, day out with the surveys we run, where engagement is moving in the right direction and other metrics are moving in the right direction. You see these big business outcomes either achieved or go down.
And I think when it comes to impacting on those business outcomes as well, we'll repeat again, but it really comes down to the questions that you ask, doesn't it, as well? So like, how are you going to impact on retention might be a question that you get asked in a business case, but asking around that intent to stay, but then getting the context as to why people choose to stay and leave gives you that additional insight that enables you to look at without having to run focus groups and scratch your head and go, well, why? Actually, you can build that into the employee listening program. And so it's really thinking about, and I think that's what we try and do with the organizations that we work with, is just really challenge you to think about, why are we asking this question? And is it going to impact on those business outcomes that we're looking to affect? And if it doesn't, then why are we asking it? So it's almost kind of that challenger mentality to say, we don't want to keep doing this with you if we're not going to see those improvements. So let's really think about those questions that we ask. Let's find out what all of our stakeholders need to know from this, and then let's build it so that we can actually create that lasting impact.
Yeah, when I build surveys with people, it's I very much take the view. My mantra is that every question should be actionable.
Yeah.
Every question you build into a survey should have an impact, or influence an impact. The days of having nice to have questions in surveys are probably, hopefully, long gone, because that's you're not seeing any return for asking that question if it's nice to have.
And that brings us on to kind of the importance of taking stakeholders on that journey with you. I think, one, it's about defining who your stakeholders are, and finding out what they really want to get from your employee engagement program or your employee listening program as well. And I also really like to use this model because it's almost like stepping stones that you can take. But again, it starts with the end in mind. Set that strategy and vision, know what you're looking to solve for, and then link everything back to there. But do your research, think about your stakeholders, because your CFO is going to look for different things than your CTO. And other leaders across the business, you might have employee forums who have got a vested interest and who are closer to the people on the front line within your organizations as well, who have got an idea of what people want to say as well and the challenges that they're facing. So you can build, you need to get them on board as well. So map it out and go and have conversations with people and ask them, how it would feel walking down that corridor in 2 years' time, to Ian's point, and what would help them get there. Include people managers at different levels, operational leaders, because again, they're closest to the teams who are doing a lot of the doing in the organization as well, and getting them on board is going to stop you pushing things uphill, which is the hard yards, and actually taking people on that journey with you. And this model really talks to that, because if we get people bought into that strategy and vision, if we get people thinking and feeling differently about engagement and the impact that it will have, then we win hearts and minds. And if that's the big bit, that's the beautiful bit, because when you see that happen, it does feel differently, because we do change mindsets and we get leaders bought in and we prepare them for this culture that we're looking to create. And if we win hearts and minds, we inspire action, and all the other good stuff comes after that. And that's when you can really demonstrate that return on investment. So if you can map out your stakeholders, work out who they are, take them on that journey, link everything back for them as well, and position it in their way so they see the business impact it will have, it'll make your life so much easier. But it's not always easy to kind of capture those people and do that, but it's absolutely worth its weight in gold, because then it's not just a piece of paper with a business case on it. It's a living, breathing thing that people around you are going to support as well. And that's going to make your life so much easier. So in the business case template, you'll see that you can scan at the end of the webinar, and within the ebook itself, there is a little model that you can look at when you're thinking about those stakeholders. But it's such a critical role in your journey, and it's a beautiful thing when it comes together. I always like converting the cynical ones as well, who are like, oh God, not another survey, or not another, we're not bothered about this. The point at which you turn them around, they'll become your biggest advocates. So I set you that challenge today to convert your cynics and get them on board with everything that you're trying to do. If anyone's got any experiences that they want to share about how they've done that well, or challenges they've had, then pop it in the chat as well. I'm liking the interaction that we've got today. But one of the journeys that we take organisations on when we work with them is, and the critical bit really in terms of setting that strategy and vision, is a discovery workshop with those key stakeholders. And it's giving them a voice to feel as if they're part of that journey with you as well. And what we hear in those, alongside things like executive one-to-ones, where we'll hear what they want to see from an employee listening programme and hear from it at the end, we will weave all of that in, so we end up asking the right questions linked to that business outcome. And after the survey is closed, then Ian goes back in and he closes that loop, and we repeat back what we've heard through everyone's thoughts and opinions in the employee surveys, linked to those business metrics, and then we tell that story back. And I think that's the most powerful thing. Start with the end in mind, take people on that journey with you as you're building that business case, and close that loop. So know what you're solving for, ask the right questions. I'm making it sound really easy, aren't I? But it is an absolute beautiful thing when it happens. And we just had someone, inspiring action. Can you talk to simple action planning? Our biggest challenge is to ensure we do something with the survey or focus group data. There's a fear leaders work, commit the time. Sorry, I'm reading this out loud while I'm reading it. This is a good question. Thank you. The time to address what we hear in HR over the implementing listen and not doing anything that's about harm and good. Absolutely. It's where most employee listening programs fail. So the question really was how to truly genuinely do action planning well, I think, on the back of survey results. Ian, you'll have seen this done well, you'll have seen it done not so well. What are your thoughts?
I think for action planning, it's about, for me personally, it's about pushing it down to the lowest level. So within any survey, you're going to have corporate actions, which HR teams or teams at the corporate level are going to want to pick up. So I don't know, if everybody's not unhappy with the benefits, maybe a benefits program is something at that big corporate level you're going to pick up. But for most actions, you're going to push those down to team level, and you're going to want teams to pick those up. So there's two things about that. One is the majority of actions that come out of an employee survey or any engagement survey, 90% of them are about behaviour change. It's very rarely that you're going to come out with something where you need to change a process, or you need to invent a process, or you need something new implementing the organisation. 90% of stuff is about behaviour change, whether it be communication change or the way you lead, or the way you manage, or the way you recognise. So it's about behaviour change, and the behaviour change is either behaviour change for employees within the team, or it's behaviour change of a leader or a manager of that team. So pushing those actions down at that local level is really important, and understanding what those actions are, and critically keeping it to a very, very small number of actions. Anything above 3 actions coming out of the survey for a team is too many. Pick the ones which are going to have the biggest impact and limit it to that. The other thing, though, is that people respect what you inspect. So it's no use saying to a team manager, take action on the survey results, please. Okay, you've got a small number of things. Here's 3 key actions. Can you do those? They won't do them because time is precious. You know, the managers broadly are time poor. As we said, the number of things that we're requesting managers to do nowadays is tripled, quadrupled from 10, 15, 20 years ago. So the next layer up of leaders, the directors or the leaders of that division, they have to buy into the process. They have to help managers. It's not about expecting. It's not about using a big stick, if you like, to make sure that they do those actions. It's about being supportive and making sure you give your managers time to take those actions. So for me, taking actions on surveys is about pushing it down to the lowest level within teams and making sure those teams buy into those, but also getting the support from the next layer up to give people time and energy and to get involved and be interested in making sure those actions land well. That's the key thing for me.
I think just to add to that, I think Hayley will shout at me for saying the same thing about 4 times in this webinar, but I think if we ask the right questions, it becomes much easier for managers to take action, and that's about keeping it simple. So if we include questions in the survey where it makes it really easy for managers to understand those responses and enable them to have meaningful conversations with their teams, then that's the sweet spot. It's not about complicated action plans. And actually, we've just built a really simple action planning tool within WorkBuzz that enables managers to focus on 3 key things. And I think the other piece around that as well is, again, it's changing the way that people think about surveys. And I love including questions in surveys that are a bit reflective. And I know Ian loves this too. But it's, you know, what makes you proud to work here in the last 6 months? What's been your proudest moments? Give managers something that enables them to motivate their teams to rally around if they're going through a tough quarter or whatever it might be. You know, if you're working in health and social care, the impact that you have on your patients. If you work in manufacturing, you know, there are still things that make us proud at every level of the organisation. Sometimes it's just been asked that question to reflect on it and do something about it. And rather than just when the survey is closed, talk about an engagement score, then we can really just tell our stories, right? We can say, do you know what? It was so humbling to read these stories. And this applies at every level. We've had CEOs that absolutely love this too, because again, they're not going out just with some results that kind of don't mean anything. Underneath all of that is the culture piece. It's how it feels to work there. So I think from an action planning perspective, if we keep it simple and we really get people to focus on areas to celebrate as well as things to improve, and set them up for success in terms of, you know, making it really easy for them to know what to focus on and almost giving them little nudges through the great technologies that exist nowadays, to know what to do, give them resources. And that's kind of what our action planning tool is. They can go to a library and pick some tools and some resources that guides them on what to do next. And that's kind of where action planning can do really well. Thanks, Hayley. She's let me repeat the question. Anyway, thank you for that. That was a really good question. Anything else to add, Ian?
Yeah, it's an important point. I mean, if you think about what we're trying to do, it's really strange in many ways. You know, we're taking employees' feelings, behaviours, emotions, we're measuring it and turning those emotions into numbers and percentages. And then we give them back to managers and say, those are a load of numbers and percentages. Can you turn those back into emotions, feelings, and behaviours, please? And it's a strange old thing that we do in many ways. And you know, it's no wonder that action planning fails sometimes when organisations do that. They just hand back a load of numbers and percentages to managers and say, can you do that, please? Can you just sort all that out? And keeping it simple is a really key point, because you just want simple things that are coming out, which are going to make the biggest difference. You need some help. So things like our action planning tool has been built with that in mind, where it makes suggestions, it gives you things to do based on your results. So there's all the help you can get in terms of action planning is really important, because it is a strange part of the world we live in when we're doing what we do.
I think it's also how you enable your HR business partners to support those areas of the business as well. And I think to the question made, it's how you cascade that and empower managers so it isn't a HR owned piece. You can actually empower the business, really. So this comes part of your culture. And when you get to that point, that's where you know that this truly is embedded in your culture as well. So stakeholders are key. If you think about like the journey that you go on in terms of these stepping stones that are needed, and you take people on that journey with you, it'll make your life so much easier. We work with organisations who are really trying to push this uphill, and it's so hard. But when you've got those stakeholders aligned and they're in it and they believe in it, and you've done that great job of proving that business case out and got them behind it, that's smooth sailing at that point. It's not easy, but you know that everyone's swimming in the same direction. Right, let's move on to the next bit, which is really just to summarize kind of that case for like why it's important. So really your job is to get people thinking differently about what engagement is. It's not just about an engagement score. If you can tie that to the business metrics, so the most important thing within your organization, that's where you'll start to get people thinking and feeling differently about this. Take the time to understand senior leader priorities and perspectives, because that will help you really frame this in the most compelling way. I often talk about like our job is to be positively influencing people. So, you know, really get them thinking and challenging their thinking about what's gone before and help them reframe it in their own minds. Use a template, and that's what we've got in the ebook that we'll share with you afterwards, that helps you begin to kind of build that business case out in a structured way and get you thinking about all of this different things, and show and demonstrate how employee engagement links to those business outcomes. There's so much credible industry research out there, and you'll have stuff that's more relevant based on the geographies that you're in or based on the sector that you're in. But use it, because again, I think those senior leaders are going to look for that external social proof as well, just to show the evidence that sits behind it. And include employee listening practices, not just surveys. It's how we come at the world. You know, we enable you to listen in lots of different ways, but you will be listening using internal comms tools. You know, you might use Facebook Workplace, Slack, whatever it is. Use all of that to really shape the business case. Use the stories, use the messages, use what's gone before. Use the verbatim commentary and the qualitative data to support that business case to help you capture those critical insights. And choose the right partner. Little cheeky wink from me here. We're a very good one. But there are others out there, but maybe not as good. But I think going with someone who's going to support you on that journey and not just tick a survey box, but help you build a strategy is really important as well. And just invest time in communicating to the business case to different stakeholder groups, sense check it, get them on side, and then you're going to be in the best possible position to kind of move this forward. And address questions promptly, because again, it's just that close the loop. We're all about closing the loop at WorkBuzz. So just make sure that you've covered off every single pushback that you can possibly get to help you get that business case through. So we have pulled together a suite of resources to help you build your business case, you'll be pleased to know. So if you haven't already, you can scan the QR code on the screen now, and you can download our ebook, which has been carefully curated by myself, Ian, and other colleagues across WorkBuzz, to really think about how to do this well. And if you wanted any advice, my email's on the slide at the end, but reach out on LinkedIn, we're everywhere. We'd be happy to help. There's a business case template within it that helps you really think about it, structure it. And just to say as well, in the ebook, there is all of that evidence curated for you already. So there's lots of stats in there that you can pull out to build that business case as well. So we've really tried to give you everything in one place to make life as simple as possible. And we've even created an ROI calculator. So especially if you're looking to impact on employee turnover, improve retention, then if you scan the code on here, it will take you straight to a link where you can plug in your own data. And I actually did this on a call with a client recently where they knew their numbers and we went through it. And once you plug the numbers in, it will give you the potential savings. And this has been created with the expertise of our in-house team who have been doing this. We've looked at lots of external data as well that looks at kind of average costs around this, but you can absolutely plug your own data in, and that might tweak the ears of your senior leadership team as you're looking to build this business case, as well as you can look at the actual pound dollar impact. You'll see it's in pounds and dollars, just so you can tailor that to the geographies that you're in and hopefully help you build that business case. So hopefully you've been scanning away on those QR codes and getting all of those resources. But we will be following up with an email, including all of these things and a recording of the webinar from today. But just before we go, we've got a few minutes left. If anyone had any questions while you've got myself and Ian, then we'd be happy to answer them. We've got Jackie saying, thank you so much. You are very welcome. And hope you've enjoyed it. Go back to your weather, whatever that may be. May it snow, may it be sunny, may it be rainy, but let us leave with joy and smiles of this Thursday afternoon. A massive thank you for interacting with us. It's made it better because of that. Join us for our next webinar on Tuesday, the 27th of February. It's going to be a great one. We've got Premier Foods, who are a food manufacturing company here in the UK, talking about how they boosted productivity through employee engagement. So a real life example of an organisation putting this into practice, everything that we've talked about today. And if there's anything that myself and Ian can help you with, get in touch. My email's there. Ian's is the same without the Dawn Smedley at the beginning, obviously. So thank you, Ian. Thank you for being an amazing kind of host with me today, and have a great evening, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.